Welcome back to Northeast Legends and Stories, where we dive deep into the rich tapestry of the Northeast's past, uncovering tales that have shaped its history and captured imaginations across generations. I'm your host, Mike D., and as the holidays wrap around us like a fresh blanket of snow, I wanted to do something a little different for you all. You've been with me through ghost towns, haunted houses, hermits, and legends that chill the bones. But tonight, in the spirit of the season, I've written an original Christmas story just for this community. It's set right here in New England, in a small coastal town, much like the ones we all know and love. It's a tale of loss, wonder, redemption, and the quiet magic that can still find us when we need it most. So sit back, grab a warm drink, pull your chair a little closer to the fire, and let's lose ourselves in this story together. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening, for sharing your own stories, and for making this podcast feel like a fireside gathering of friends.
In the small coastal town of Harbor's Edge, Maine, where the Atlantic waves crash against jagged rocks like an eternal drumbeat, and the winters arrive early with a crisp bite that reminds you you're alive, lived a man named Elias Thorne. Elias was 42, with salt and pepper hair he kept short because long hair made him feel like he was pretending to be someone younger, and eyes that had once burned with plans and dreams but now carried a permanent weariness, like a sailor who'd stared too long at grey horizons. He worked as a mid-level manager at a logistics firm in Portland, spending his days in spreadsheets and conference calls, driving an hour each way in his sensible Subaru through snowstorms and fog. His wife, Clara, taught third grade at the local elementary school, the kind of teacher kids remembered for the rest of their lives because she saw something special in every one of them. They had two children, Lily, 10, with Clara's wild curls and a sketchbook always tucked under her arm, and Ben, 8, who collected rocks from the beach and believed with all his heart that one day he'd find a genuine pirate doubloon. From the outside, the Thornes had everything a New England family could want. A weathered shingle-style house on a hill overlooking the harbor, a golden retriever named Salty who greeted every morning with enthusiastic tail wags, enough money to pay the bills and take a modest summer trip to Acadia. But inside Elias, something had gone quiet. The Christmas season, which used to fill him with a boyish excitement, building snow forts with his siblings, sneaking cookies from the kitchen, now felt like a performance he was failing at. The town sparkled with lights strung across lobster traps on the wharf, wreaths on every lamppost, and carolers in red scarves strolling the snowy streets. Clara would haul out the boxes of ornaments early, the kids would beg to decorate the tree the day after Thanksgiving, and Elias would go through the motions, stringing lights on the porch, hanging the stockings, nodding approvingly at the gingerbread house Ben and Lily built together. But inside he felt nothing. No warmth, no wonder, just a hollow ache that had been growing for years. He couldn't pinpoint when it started, maybe when the promotion he'd chased for a decade went to someone younger with better connections. Maybe when his own small business idea, a coastal supply shop for boaters and fishermen, died on the vine because the numbers never added up, and the bank said no. Maybe it was simply the slow realization that the big dreams of his 20s, traveling the world, starting a company that changed lives, leaving a mark everyone would remember, had quietly slipped away, replaced by mortgage payments, parent-teacher conferences, and the endless cycle of work, eat, sleep, repeat. He loved Clara and the kids fiercely, would take a bullet for any of them without hesitation, but even that love felt distant, muffled by the fog of his own disappointment. He'd lie awake at night, listening to the wind off the water rattling the shutters, wondering what had happened to the man who used to believe he could build something lasting, something that mattered. This year, the darkness hit harder than ever. December came in with a nor'easter that dumped 2 feet of snow and knocked out power for 3 days. The family huddled by the fireplace with board games and flashlights, laughing as Salty shook snow all over the living room, telling stories about the time the harbor froze solid enough to skate on. Elias tried to join in, forcing a chuckle here and there, but his mind was a storm of its own. On an email he'd gotten that afternoon about budget cuts at work, on the feeling that he was treading water while everyone else swam ahead, on the nagging voice that said he'd failed as a provider, as a role model, as a man. It all boiled over on December 23rd. They'd spent the evening decorating the tree, a beautiful balsam fir Clara had picked from the lot on Route 1, its branches filling the house with that sharp, fresh pine scent that usually lifted Elias's spirits. Lily carefully placed her handmade ornaments, stars cut from cardboard and painted with glitter she'd saved from last year's school project. Ben hung the lower branches heavy with plastic icicles, knocking a few off in his excitement and giggling as he chased them across the rug. Clara strung popcorn garlands, humming "Oh, Come All Ye Faithful" under her breath, her cheeks flushed from the fire. Elias helped lift the angel to the top, but his mind was elsewhere. On the client who had yelled at him that morning, on the bills piling up in the drawer, on the sense that life was passing him by like a ship he'd missed at the dock. When Ben accidentally shattered Clara's grandmother's antique glass ornament, a delicate painted sphere from the 1940s handed down with stories of Great Depression Christmases, Elias lost it. "Ben, can't you be more careful for once? That's not a toy. It's irreplaceable," he snapped, his voice sharper than the broken shards on the floor. The room went silent. Ben's lip quivered, tears welling up in his big brown eyes. Lily froze mid-reach for another ornament, her face crumpling. Clara's eyes filled with hurt and confusion. "Elias," she started softly, but he was already storming to his study, muttering about needing to finish work emails that could wait until morning. He slammed the door harder than he meant, sank into his leather chair, and stared out at the harbour lights twinkling across the water like distant, mocking stars. Salty whined at the door, scratching gently, but Elias ignored him, pouring a glass of whiskey from the bottle he kept in the desk drawer for nights like this. "What is wrong with me?" he whispered to the empty room, his voice breaking. "Why can't I just feel it? Why does everything feel empty? They deserve better than this, better than me." The whiskey burned going down, but it didn't touch the cold inside him. The house grew quiet, the kids sent to bed early with hushed goodnights from Clara, who eventually knocked softly on the study door. "Elias, please talk to me," she said through the wood. But he couldn't. Not yet. She sighed and went to bed alone, the floor creaking as she climbed the stairs. As the clock in the hallway struck midnight, the wind outside howled louder, rattling the old windows like something wanted in. The room grew unnaturally still and colder, the fire in the hearth dying to embers despite the fresh log Elias had added. He rubbed his eyes, blaming the alcohol for the sudden chill that raised goosebumps on his arms and made his breath visible in the dim lamplight. Then, from the corner of the study, a soft glow began to form, a shimmering outline that solidified slowly, like frost forming on glass in reverse. It was an old man, tall and broad-shouldered, with weathered skin etched by years of salt air and sun, white hair tied back in a ponytail, and a beard that matched Elias's own, but fuller, wilder, like it had been shaped by the sea rather than a razor. He wore a red flannel shirt faded from countless washes, suspenders over wool pants tucked into scuffed boots, the kind of clothes Elias remembered from childhood photos, and the smell of pipe tobacco and sawdust. The man's eyes twinkled with a familiar warmth, and he smiled the way only one person ever had, wide, genuine, with crinkles at the corners that said he'd seen hard times but chosen joy anyway. "Grandpa Henry?" Elias whispered, his voice cracking like thin ice. Henry Thorne had been gone for 27 years, taken by a sudden heart attack while mending lobster traps on the dock when Elias was 15. The ghost, or vision, or whatever it was, nodded, his voice warm and gravelly, like the tide pulling over pebbles on the beach. "Elias, my boy, you look like a man carrying the whole ocean on his shoulders. I've been watching, and it's time we talked." Elias stammered, half rising from his chair, his mind reeling between fear and disbelief. "This can't be real. I'm dreaming. Or the whiskey." Henry raised a translucent hand, the glow around him pulsing gently. "Real enough for tonight. No time for questions. I've come to show you what you've forgotten, and what you still have time to remember. Take my hand, son. Let's go for a little trip." Before Elias could protest, Henry extended his hand. The room spun, colors blurring into a vortex of snow and starlight, wind rushing past like the nor'easter outside had burst through the walls. Elias felt weightless, pulled forward into the swirl, his stomach dropping like the first hill on a roller coaster. When the spinning stopped, Elias found himself standing in the backyard of the same house. But it was summer 1988. The air was thick with the scent of salt and wild roses, the harbour sparkling under a blue sky, gulls wheeling overhead with their sharp cries. A 15-year-old version of himself was kneeling by the water's edge, flat stones in hand, skipping them across the calm surface with Grandpa Henry beside him. Young Elias concentrated, tongue sticking out the side of his mouth, and flung a perfect flat rock. Skip, 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 5 bounces before it sank. "Did you see that, Grandpa? 5! That's my best yet," he shouted, jumping up with fists pumped. Henry laughed, a deep belly rumble that Elias hadn't heard in decades, clapping the boy on the back. "That's my boy. You practiced all week for that, didn't you? I saw you out here every evening after chores, throwing rock after rock until your arm ached. Patience and heart. That's how you make something beautiful. Remember that, Elias. The big things in life? They're built from the small ones, one throw at a time." Young Elias grinned, grabbing another stone. "One more? Bet I can get 6. Henry nodded, eyes twinkling. "Go on then. Show me what you've got." Elias watched, throat tight with emotion. He remembered that day vividly now, the pride swelling in his chest like a tide coming in, the way Henry's praise made him feel invincible, like he could conquer anything if he just kept trying. "You see?" Ghost Henry said beside him, voice soft. "That was an achievement. Not the rock skipping the water, but the effort you put in. The joy you took in trying, in improving. You built confidence that day, brick by brick. It carried you further than you know." The scene dissolved again, swirling into autumn 1996. Elias, now 23, stood in a crowded high school auditorium, lanky in an ill-fitting suit, accepting a scholarship award for college on stage. His parents beamed from the front row, his mum dabbing her eyes with a tissue, his dad nodding proudly. Clara, his girlfriend then, with her hair in a ponytail and a dress she'd borrowed from her sister, clapped wildly beside them, whistling through her fingers. The principal handed him the envelope, shaking his hand. This young man worked 2 jobs while maintaining a 3.8 GPA. "Elias Thorne, you're going places." Young Elias cleared his throat at the microphone. "I want to thank my family, and Grandpa Henry, who taught me that nothing worth having comes easy." The crowd applauded. Henry, in the vision, turned to Elias. "You earned every bit of that scholarship. No one gave it to you. You fought for it when quitting would have been easier. The late nights studying after flipping burgers, the weekends mowing lawns to save for books. That's the man you were becoming, strong, determined. Don't forget him." Another shift, this time to a hospital room in 2010. Elias, 32, held newborn Lily in his arms for the first time, her tiny fingers wrapping around his thumb like a promise. Clara slept exhausted in the bed, her face peaceful despite the labor. The nurse had just left, the room quiet except for Lily's soft breaths and the beeps of monitors. Young Elias whispered to the baby, "Hey, little one. I'm your dad. We're going to have so many adventures." Clara stirred, smiling weakly. "She has your eyes, Elias." He kissed her forehead. "She has your strength." The nurse returned. "Everything looks good. You're a natural, Dad." Elias beamed, the overwhelming love washing over him like sunlight breaking through clouds. Ghost Henry watched with a soft smile. "You created life, Elias. Brought a soul into the world, guided her first steps, her first words through fevers and falls. And then Ben came along, doubling the joy. That's no small thing. That's eternal, the love you poured into them every day, even when you were tired from work or worried about bills. That's achievement in its purest form." But Elias shook his head, tears streaming now. "It's not enough, Grandpa. I wanted more. My own company. Something big to leave behind, a legacy people would talk about. Now the kids are growing up, and I've got nothing to show for it. It's too late for adventures, for starting over. Henry's eyes softened, a hint of sadness mixing with his warmth. Is it? Let's see what might still be if you choose differently. The vortex pulled them forward this time, the swirl brighter, warmer. They landed in the same house, but it was Christmas Eve 2035. Elias, now 52 with silver hair and laugh lines etched deep from years of smiling, sat by a roaring fire with Clara, grey but radiant, her hand in his. Lily, 25, a graphic designer with her own studio in Portland, showed off sketches for a children's book she'd illustrated, inspired by the stories Elias used to tell her about Grandpa Henry's fishing adventures. "Dad, what do you think of this one? The pirate ship on the harbour?" she asked. Elias leaned in, adjusting his glasses. "It's perfect, Lil. Just like the ones you drew as a kid. Remember when we'd sit on the porch and imagine treasure buried under the docks?" Lily laughed. "How could I forget? That's why I became an artist. Your stories sparked it all." Ben, 23, an environmental engineer working on coastal restoration projects, talked animatedly about a new initiative to protect the harbour from erosion. "Dad, you'd love this. We're using the same mapping tech you showed me when I was little. Remember those old charts from Grandpa's attic?" Elias nodded, pride swelling. "I do. And look at you now, saving the coastline. That's real work, son, the kind that matters." Grandkids, 3 of them, ages 2 to 6, toddled around, one on Elias's lap as he read The Night Before Christmas, with dramatic voices that made them giggle. The walls were covered in Lily's framed art, Ben's awards from college, photos of family trips to Acadia and beyond. Elias had started a small consulting firm in 2028, helping local businesses go green and sustainable, but the real joy wasn't in the business meetings. It was in mentoring Ben through his engineering degree, collaborating with Lily on her book illustrations, teaching the grandkids to skip stones on the same harbour beach where he'd learned as a boy, and holding Clara's hand through it all, their love deeper after weathering storms together. "You see," Henry said, voice thick with emotion, "the future isn't written in stone, you can still build. But look closer. The real achievements aren't the office or the bank account or even the firm you start. They're these moments, these connections. The way you show up every day, even when it's hard. The stories you tell, the lessons you pass on. The love you pour into them, like water on dry soil. Being a father, a husband, that's the gift that keeps giving, the legacy that outlives us all." Elias felt the ice inside him shatter completely, warmth spreading like sunrise over the water, filling every corner of his being. The depression that had weighed him down for years lifted like fog burning off the harbour, replaced by a quiet, steady gratitude that felt like coming home after a long voyage. As the vision faded, he found himself back in the study, alone but profoundly changed. The clock read 12:15. Only minutes had passed. He stood, legs shaky but heart steady, and walked to the living room where Clara sat, reading by the tree lights. Without a word, he wrapped his arms around her from behind, burying his face in her hair. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, voice trembling. "I've been lost for so long, but I'm here now. Really here. I love you. All of you, more than anything." Clara turned, eyes searching his, and saw something new, light returning, the man she'd married shining through. "What happened?" she asked softly, cupping his face. The kids, hearing voices, crept downstairs in pajamas, Salty trailing behind with a wagging tail. Elias pulled them into a group hug, apologizing for his sharpness, for being distant, for not seeing the magic right in front of him. "I had a visit from Grandpa Henry," he said, voice steady now. "He showed me what I'd forgotten. The small things, the laughs, the hugs, the stories. They're what make life worth it. Not the big plans that never happen. Being your dad, that's the best achievement I could ever have." Ben wiped his tears. Lily smiled, and Clara squeezed his hand. They forgave instantly, as families do when love is the foundation. The family stayed up late that night, rebuilding the gingerbread house together with extra frosting to fix the cracks, laughing when the roof collapsed again, telling stories about Grandpa Henry's legendary lobster bakes, and how he could whistle any tune on a blade of grass. Elias felt the joy he'd been chasing, not in grand gestures, but in these small acts, wiping Ben's sticky fingers, praising Lily's creative turret, holding Clara close as the clock ticked toward Christmas. Christmas morning dawned bright and cold, the harbour glittering like diamonds under a fresh dusting of snow. Elias woke early, made pancakes shaped like stars for Lily and snowmen for Ben, helped Clara with coffee and fresh squeezed orange juice. They opened gifts slowly, savouring each one. Elias reading the handmade card from Ben about how Dad was his hero for teaching him to tie knots and fix bikes. Lily's drawing of the family on the beach with Salty chasing gulls. Clara's gift of a leather-bound journal for Elias to write his next big idea. No rush, no distractions, just presence. In the afternoon, they bundled up and walked the snowy harbour path, skipping stones on patches of thin ice, Salty barking at seagulls, Ben finding a treasure rock that Elias declared the best yet. Lily sketched the lighthouse, Elias holding her mittens while she drew. That night, as snow fell soft and silent, Elias stood on the porch with Clara, watching the lights twinkle across the water. "You know," he said, "I used to think achievements were the big things. Promotions, money, starting something huge that everyone talks about. But today showed me it's the little things. Being here, being Dad, being yours. That's the real gift, the one that keeps giving long after we're gone." Clara squeezed his hand, leaning her head on his shoulder. "It always was, Elias. Welcome back." From that Christmas forward, Elias lived differently, present, grateful, building memories one small act at a time. He started that consulting firm 2 years later, but it was the family moments that mattered most. Teaching Ben to drive on the icy roads, walking Lily down the aisle at her wedding, bouncing grandkids on his knee while telling tales of Grandpa Henry. The depression never returned, replaced by a quiet joy that grew with every hug, every laugh, every shared sunset over the harbour. And on quiet nights, when the wind whispered through the pines and the moon hung low over the water, Elias swore he felt a gentle hand on his shoulder, a familiar voice in the breeze. "That's my boy. Keep building."